How long I'm going to have a couple of things to say, but I do want to share a couple of thoughts. I want to try to focus in on a couple of things that for me are really important, that represent about who we are, how we got here. I want to start out with a little bit about me. You know, I grew up in I'm going to say a difficult childhood. I don't want to get into that in a whole variety of reasons. But I had to launch out in an early age of my life and figure out, you know, who I was going to be and what I was going to do. And because of all this uncertainty, I was always drawn to nature and to exploring and being an adventurer, because I had to do that to find a place for me. And I remember growing up as an early young guy, and one of the first things, and this is probably the same for you, wherever you were, somewhere in your life, being out under your first big starry night, and seeing all these constellations and stars and wondering about, well, where's the end of this? Where does it go? How did it get there? What's possible? I mean, is there an end to this? But always being enthralled by the beauty of the starry nights. I went on, I grew up, went off to college, got involved during the Vietnam movement. I ended up doing a lot of social service work. I'm not going to cover any of that territory. I remember when I was in junior high school in music class, and believe me, if any of you know about me, I have no artistic talent whatsoever. Okay, I can't paint, draw, sing, dance. I can't even chew gum. I can't even chew gum at the same time. But you know, I was in music class, and I remember it was the day that President Kennedy was assassinated, and there was like this huge breath, inhale, amongst everybody, including me, you know, and I was a young guy. I didn't even know what that meant, but I knew it was big, because it was in the days of Camelot, you know, and there was all this flamboyant language about what's possible in the world and what we can do and how we move society together, and that, you know, we still were segregated. We're talking about racial equality, and you know, I mean, all this was like happening, and I'm like 10, 14 years old, 12, I don't even remember. But anyway, I remember I was listening to Norwegian Wood by the Beatles when President Kennedy was assassinated. And it just like totally dampened everything out. And I left there. You know, I went to college. I began to listen to Joan Baez and Judy Collins, Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell. And eventually she sang a song about Paint Me a Starry Night, you know, and I remember being out in Colorado when I was a young guy, looking at all that, trying to figure out where my life was going to go. But from my earliest days, I understood there's something about being alive and human that's something that's way bigger than now. It's way bigger than you. It has to do with connectedness. It has to do with the stars. It has to do with all that energy and wherever it comes from, you know? And I didn't even have any idea about any of that, but I knew it was important to me. I remember as the years went on in 1968, then I began to listen to music, you know, and you guys know that you've heard this. Does anybody remember Abraham Martin and John? And that music and what it means for our country and who those people were. And I just knew as a person that I had to be involved somehow in some way that wasn't even disclosed to me at the time. I needed to focus on what all that meant. The possibility of the stars, the endlessness of possibilities, hope, you know, the music of Abraham, Martin, and John, all this. And there's not a script here, it's just energy. And so, and I'm going to skip fast forward here, but in 1994, 1993, you know, the president, who had a lot of ideas for our country and hopes and dreams, came to St. Louis because he started his campaign across America here at the old courthouse. And by the way, one of our teams will be going into that courthouse probably in the next month, helping to preserve and protect it for decades ahead. Okay? Nobody ever would have known about that then. Kathleen and I had no connectedness with the president or political parties. You know, both of us worked in the juvenile court. One of the first jobs I ever had was working for a juvenile court judge, where he put me in a juvenile detention facility, Boonville, for several weeks, as, you know, to try to investigate the abuse that was going on for minors in our state. I graduated from all that, and in every experience I was more and more emboldened, but I was more hopeful about what America could be and about the problems that were confronting us, and always so much believing in where I came from, my youth, and my hope.